standardized dispatch API work that's been led by the ENA Open Networks project over the last 2 or 3 years. Tim will introduce the context. Pete Simister will overview the documentation, and then Doug Maxwell will take you through the mural board that will be up for the next couple of weeks, where any comments you can add onto the mural and they'll be taken on board, or indeed hopefully springboard off of thoughts off other people's comments. So without further ado, just some housekeeping points. So as with most sessions of this nature, it'll be conducted under the Chatham House rule, which for those not familiar with it is feel free to use what people have said, but please do not attribute it to the individuals or their organisations. As Reese has already said, this session's being recorded and it will be shared for people who have been unable to make this live session. As a matter of courtesy, please remain on mute when you're not speaking. And if you have questions, feel free to put your hand up or raise them in the chat. If you raise your hand, we'll come to you. And if you're comfortable to do so, please put your camera on if just in case anybody is on the call is hearing impaired or whatever. But above all, please be curious, ask questions, probe. And I should say to all of you, I meant to say earlier, we noted that over 80 people have already been into the mural and had a route around, which is great news. Hopefully, as you review the documents, you'll feel empowered to come onto the mural and put further comments on. I've already run through the format for today. In terms of introducing the folks on the call from the project, Tim Manandar, who chairs the Flexibility Dispatch Interoperability Working Group and will do the intro. Reese, who you've already heard speak, who's the Technical Project Manager leading the project on behalf of ENA. Myself from CGI, who are working with the team to deliver the standard. Pete Simister, who has led on the development of a lot of the documentation, and Doug Maxwell, my colleague, will take you through the mural. And with that, Tim, I will hand over to you to set the context for the project.
Thank you, Rich. Good afternoon, everyone. As a intro away from ENA, I work in the UK Power Networks DSO, and as one of the senior managers leading the technology solutions aspects of which is very much linked to the work we are doing in the ENA, which we had talked about. So it's very much close to my heart. Just a wider context before we get into a bit of an intro on this. I think I would imagine quite a lot of yourselves have been in the 2 workshops we have conducted from the start of the year in April and May. But as you probably are aware, if you're not, the work in Open Networks project is coming to a close, and the flexibility element of the Open Networks project is being handed over, is being picked up by Lexon, who is the new market facilitator, as you probably are aware. And this is the last bit of the Open Networks that is being delivered, which will be probably the last one that will go as part of the handover. So, and also I'm quite excited to have this webinar today to give you a bit of a tangible view of what the work has been. In the previous 2 workshops, we have had a lot of input and discussions and the approach that we shared with you, and now that has helped us to inform our design and the draft documentation that we have shared last week by Reese from ENA. So this is where we are. We have today we're going to cover the outputs, draft outputs, which are with the draft documentation that will get published at the end of the project. So the way I think we see this going at the moment is it's still quite a dynamic exercise. We are trying to build a industry standard in a very short period of time. So there are things perhaps still not fully mapped out, but we are working in a more of agile manner to be able to do so. So this kind of kicks off our formal co-design process with the industry, with the mural board and various other activities that Rich will cover. And one of the things we're looking at how we're going to do external assurance for the work we are doing. What does that actually look for, so that we get a full seal of approval from the industry. That it also includes working with DESNES and NCSC, who are also supporting the project in terms of technical advisory group role. And as I mentioned, once we publish the standard, which currently we are looking at August onwards, that will be forms part of the Lexon handover, and the next step would be the standard will be get into implementation by both network operators, network operators like us. And this is currently on that. This is just for everyone's benefit. This is currently being committed to be adopted by DSOs in GB. So 60 DSOs. However, we also got NISO on board, who are also going to be picking this up and assessing against their big portfolio of services and how that can be implemented. So that's a really good message to share. And then also one of the things that we have already started is what does the certification process looks like for the industry. Someone who builds the standard. Builds a technology based on the standard. What is the user journey to from the start to the end of the certification, and then ready for integration to system operator. Next slide, please. For those who have attended before, I hope this is a very familiar diagram. It really this thing that we started 2.5 years ago with the concept of what is the actual work we are delivering. The scope is really between the system operator and the flex provider. Wherever that flux provider could be big, large aggregators, or two energy retailers, or fleet operators, or even single asset operator as well. And there are other activities happening, obviously, around the PAS standards, around the behind the meter, domestic flexibility, and other things that also included in the off-gems, the flexibility digital infrastructure. So hopefully the work we are doing will contribute to building a more coherent and a standard ecosystem that will help to accelerate the flexibility markets. Next slide, please. This showing for the context of this discussion today, just to highlight that the players that are involved, and I'm sure some of you would fit in one of them. We got the VTN VN, which VTN being the top node that the utilities will build, and VN virtual end node that the flex providers and their technology providers will build. And we have our dispatch platform suppliers, as well as the technology providers who will participate in this process, plus the people who we call integration partners, who need to bring in board to integrate those boxes, but also implements a lot of security design that we would be putting in the part of this project. So I would just go to the next slide. There was final, again, a refresher for everyone. the scope of the work currently is the one in the middle. There's lots of other portfolio of services in the national markets, in the transmission, and for us, so the focus is currently in the DSO market, which have these 6 standard flexibility products from the ENA, and also the live service, which is part of the RDP, particularly the Mega Dispatch. I would close on that one. I'll let CGI team run through what has been currently, has been delivered so far, and what's the next steps. Over to you, Peter.
Sure. So, Rich, are you going to? Well, yeah, but just say that the 3 documents we're talking about are the ones that have been distributed already, or all still in draft, but very nearly there. So the 3 documents I want to talk about are the solution architecture, the HTML that's been delivered, and also the GB Profile implementation guide. So the first one is the solution architecture. That's the one to start with. Want to pick up this as a someone new or someone who's heard about it but wants to know where it is now. The best place is the solution architecture. So what this gives is it says, well, okay, this is OpenADR 3, but what are we doing with it? So what are the main actors, components, the sorts of things that you'd see in a solution architecture, really? So the interfaces, the sort of storage requirements, all at a very high level. So the sort of business processes supported all at very high level, really. Then there's a summary of the security features. Now that there is more security documentation that was produced that's behind it, but this is what you need to know from an API point of view. And there's a reference to other sorts of things that would also be needed that are more like sort of data center controls and processes and things like that. But it features more the ones that are used in the API, so mutual TLS and things like that. And then finally, there's an appendix. So it's primarily around what are we doing with this API? How is it based on OpenADR 3? And then the appendix is okay. Well, how is it going to be rolled out to the industry? So the current view is given there of how that will work, but as Tim was saying earlier, it's handed over to Alexa as the market facilitator. Things may change in terms of how it's rolled out, in which case the appendix could become out of date. But fundamentally, what is it and how does it work should be there. Should continue regardless of how it's rolled out in terms of how many VTNs and VENs and things like that. And then also calls out external dependencies, so that's primarily about the security features, what certificate providers they need to be, and things like that is called out there. And again, that's also a dependency on the market facilitator to, well, who is going to provide this kind of certificate and things of that nature. Market facilitator will have to take those things away. So, Rich, do you want to talk about the questions that have been put up on the mural board here?
Yeah, happy to. So really just as prompts to stimulate you, and this is purely intended to stimulate thinking for each of the documents, and you'll see them again when Doug runs through the mural board. Just a few questions that might get you to think about things as you're reading the document. So questions like, do the current features covered in the solution architecture meet your needs and expectations for a document of this nature? And if not, then what are the things that the additional things that you might expect to see? And in reviewing the documents, where if any, do you see any technical or compatibility challenges in using these documents for implementation? Because the overarching objective of this project is to address some of the barriers to flexibility, liquidity in the flexibility markets and flexible assets providing flexibility to the system, and the standard is trying to create a single way of doing that, or is aiming to create that single way of doing it, and therefore needs to be properly interoperable. Pete, do you want to run on to what you called earlier the HTML, but the API specification?
Indeed, yep, that's that, Rich. So the API specification is delivered as an HTML document. Now, what this gives you is so we said it's supposed to OpenADR3. OpenADR3 comes with a schema, and we were working within that schema. We haven't extended it, but within that schema, there are ways of using the various different things within OpenADR, like events and reports and programs and so on, so that this will say, okay, this is how we're using them. We've defined specific payload items that are used and things of that nature, all say within the overall schema. So it's not breaking anything, but it's narrowing it down. So it's this is how you do it. These are the options available to you within this API, so not the whole of OpenADR. Then we've also done a reference implementation to go with it. So a reference implementation of a VTN and a VEN, and there's a test harness which acts like the business logic for anyone who's familiar with that term from OpenADR. So it tests the reference implementation of the VTN and the VEN. It shows end-to-end workflows, so it talks about how that works and how the reference implementation of the VTN and the VEN are architected. So these are not for live deployment. They include security features, but they are sort of self-contained. Like an OAuth provider is included, for instance, in the material that's being released, but it's not an industry-wide one. It's just purely a local one within to work within this the reference implementations and test harnesses. So it explains how that all works. It also explains how to deploy them and get them working. And that there's a lot of examples of sequence diagrams, sample JSON, things like that. So there's a lot of detailed technical information and a lot of illustrations of how the flows will work. So Rich, back to you then for the questions on the mural board.
Yeah, again, thanks, Pete. These are just prompt questions of a similar sort of nature, in terms of having reviewed the documentation. Is it clear? Is it usable? Are there additional things that would potentially be valuable to be added in, or terms that perhaps require further explanation? Pete, I'll hand back to.
Okay, yeah, and then the third one. So this is the third one of the 3 documents that have been released. So this one we're calling the View Profile Implementation Guide. So what the purpose of this is to say, okay, well, you now know what the spec is, having read the HTML, but what do you have to do? What else do you need to know in terms of building systems? Now, we're not going to tell you how to architect systems. What you have to do is meet the APR. How you do that, of course, is up to you, but there are some pointers in there for things that do need to be done. So the OpenADR is very broad. The technical spec narrows it down to specific payload items and things like that. But within that, it can then be narrowed down further to say, so for instance, there's a number of different units that are supported. Partly that's for future expansion, but as other flexibility products come along, but for the flexibility before the list of products supported that Tim went through earlier, how are those supported by the API is in there, and you know, how do you use the API to achieve those, and it also tells you the sort of rules and conventions around it. So, for instance, the things like interval periods and how you do certain things. There could be more than one way of doing things within the technical spec, but this is the way you do it to ensure interoperability. And ensuring interoperability is really key here, because that's one of the key points about this initiative, is that all system operators and all the FSPs should be using this in the same way. And so that means we have to say, do this, do it this way, and it has to be consistent. And so there's a lot in there about how to do that. So so the point of this is it's adding further restrictions. Sounds like a maybe a bit challenging, but more guidance, more restrictions that narrow down further from the technical spec to this is how you support these flexibility products. Okay, and yeah, final time back to Rich for the questions.
Yeah, and again, the questions on the documentation, very similar format in terms of getting your views on the fitness for purpose of the documents, and particularly as this is the implementation guide, are you able to pick it up and you're comfortable with using it to build the components that Tim talked about earlier. And with that, Doug, if you'd like to take control of the team sharing to introduce the mural.
No problem, Rich. Good afternoon all. Douglas Maxwell, Doug Maxwell here. So I'm just going to share my screen and I'll just share the mural board. Just before I share, the purpose of the mural board is to support obviously everybody in the call here and the wider stakeholders to facilitate the feedback and comments, etc., from the documents that's shared. Obviously, normal Word document, there can be a couple of people tracking changes, but we have invited hundreds of people to obviously comment on these documents. So we are using Mural, which is an interactive whiteboard, very similar to Miro, and to collate those feedback responses, and then that will allow us to manage that feedback in a more efficient and effective way as well. So let me share my screen. So just going to run through a bit about the invite. You want to touch on navigation, a bit on the structure, a bit on how to enter the text, and then obviously if there's any questions or anything like that as well. So just want to say I'm sharing my screen. This is now Mural. This is the Open Networks board. This is an invite only, so no sort of hyperlink will work. You need to be invited to this board, and as part of the guidance for the stakeholder feedback, the image that you're seeing here, that should be what the invite to this board looks like, and it's got my email address on it, d.maxwell@cgi.com, just to make sure everybody has access to that. If there's any issues with access to the board, the mural board, then obviously please just drop me an email, and then obviously I can happy to take it forward from there. I'll assume that nobody's used Mural before. I mean, it's a tool similar to Miro as well. It's a interactive whiteboard. You can obviously move the board left and right and up and down. So if I just left click and hold, then I can move around the board. If I scroll forward, you can zoom in, and then scroll back, you zoom out as well. Just a little bit, just down at the bottom right hand corner here, there's navigation settings. That's obviously we're on mouse mode just now, but if you use a trackpad mode, then it obviously just tells you a bit on how to navigate via the trackpad mode as well. Just the final little bit of the navigation, move mode, just basically puts a hand up, and it just means that you can move any part without sort of changing the structure of the board. So I'll just click out. So I'm just going to just run through. The purpose of this sort of very sort of brief intro session is not to go through the text verbatim. It's just to show you the structure, how to navigate, and then how to add detail as well. So I'm just going to just scroll back and zoom out. We've got a start here option. And obviously, you know, we're having this presentation just now, but we obviously wanted the board to be standalone as well. So we provide a bit of information just on the project, a bit on the why. Just scroll out a little bit. Why we're using this mural board to obviously elicit the feedback and views of the wider industry. And then we're just moving, scrolling down a bit on the how. So I'll show you just in a wee second there. The structure is that we've got the documents for review, solution architecture, for example, the question prompts that Pete and Rich have just obviously went through. Then we break the feedback sections into personas, and then the feedback space as well. So document for review, question prompt, persona, feedback space. I'm just going to just scroll out a little bit. Just going to scroll out and show 3 of these. So you'll see here, we've got the document, API spec, solution architecture, and GB profile. We've then got the specific question prompts that obviously it's just been shared there earlier. And then we've got the 3 personas as well. And this is part of the value of getting feedback related to the persona is obviously it's to understand the nuance between the needs of those different personas and those different the different stakeholders and organizations as well. So flexibility service provider, technology provider, and then industry stakeholders as well. So I'm just going to just quickly zoom out. So the structure was, we've got the documentation, which has obviously been shared. We've got the question prompts. And then what we're asking you to do is obviously related to the document and the question prompts, and obviously any other feedback that you have that's related to this work. What we'd like you to do is to select the persona that obviously that fits with yourself, your organization, and basically fill in the post-it notes. So you left click over a post-it note, and then you can just sort of type away. And then you can then click on another one. And the idea being that obviously is you go through the documentation, you get those ideas of what about this, you know, etc. You put those comments into here under the persona, and that means that we can then, as a project team, we can really get your stakeholder feedback that's as relevant as possible and fits in with your sort of organizational background as well. It's relatively straightforward from there. We can just select all and export all this into a CSV, and then that means that we can process it as well. And that is really about it. The post-its are very simple. You type in, you leave it there. Just a quick point, if you see a comment that you agree with, there is voting options on Mural, but it does get a bit complicated quite quickly. So what we're asking is if you see a comment that you agree with, then just actually if you just put that comment in again, either verbatim or copy it, and we'll take it from there. You can get voting options, etc., but we've tried to keep it as simple as possible. So yeah, if you see a comment that you agree with, just put it in again, and then that means that obviously we'll recognise that comment is important by the number of entries as well. Just a quick point, obviously we have opened this up to a lot of people. So what I will do is every day, obviously I've just put a few post-it notes here just now, but I'll go in quite a few times a day, and obviously if those post-it notes are filling up, I'll just increase the number of post-it notes, but I'll do all that behind the scenes. So there should always be space, an empty space for you to add your comments as well. And that's just really about it. I don't know if anybody's got any questions just now.
Maybe just one additional point to make for myself, Douglas. So yeah, whilst we have got specific questions here that, you know, as Rich said, to kind of prompt some thinking and really get some specific feedback that the working group and delivery team are keen to get. But any other points that you have on the documents, please do feel free to put them in the boxes. Yeah, we're interested in any feedback you have really on a document shared. So just want to make that clear.
Great, thank you, Rhys, well said.
Yep. Okay, Rich,
see,
that's back to yourself.
I see there's been one question in the chat which Rhys has kindly answered. Hopefully, Andy, that answers your question. And if you'd like to pop your email in the chat, then we'll follow up and share those. I'll just reshare my screen.
And equally, if anyone's not comfortable putting their email in the chat, I'll put mine in the chat now, and you can send me an email directly with your information, and we'll make sure that you get those documents as soon as possible.
Thanks, Rhys. So just quickly to run you through the overview of the next 3 weeks. Obviously, today's the 1st of August. And you're currently on the webinar we're hosting today. In a moment, we're going to ask you a question as to whether an additional webinar, which we're proposing for next Friday, 11 till 12, to if there is a view that it would be valuable, where we'll have a facilitated session, get people together, and have the opportunity to collaborate on the mural board and enter questions. Our thinking on doing that is one, that second session being facilitated, but it also gives you an additional week to review those documents once you've received them, Andy. So we'll ask you that question, and we'll ask you to vote on that in a moment. The week following, on the Thursday, the 14th of August, there's a hybrid engagement workshop, the opportunity to meet in person at the ENA's offices in London, but we'll also be able to join online. That's the last in a series of 3 workshops. Rhys, the invite for that has already gone out. So again, if there's anybody on the call that hasn't received that invite directly, if you'd like to ping Rhys, and we'll add you to the circulation list. Following from that, on Friday, the 15th of August, we will actually close the mural. That's ahead of the hackathon, as we're calling it, which we are running between the 19th and the 21st of August. The hackathon is virtual. It's an opportunity for organizations to familiarize themselves with the code and the reference implementation and the test harness that have been produced as part of this project, as well to support the documentation that's been published or made available as a draft. So on the 19th of August, that will be a familiarization session, and then over the subsequent the rest of the 19th and the 20th, an opportunity to familiarize yourself with the code, drop in, ask questions, explore with the development team, and then on the 21st of August, we'd like to bring people back together and for people to share the lessons and their thinking on what's been produced, and that to provide input to future stages of this work as flexibility, interoperability for dispatch moves forward, but also potentially lessons that may be of value to the wider flexibility program. So that pretty much covers the view of the next 3 weeks. Rhys, please, if you've got something to add.
Yeah, sorry. So you may have mentioned, but just to be clear, yeah, that the invites for the hackathon activities have yet to go out. The intention is that these will be online engagement sessions. So we'll be sending invites out for that likely sometime early next week. And they're likely kind of drop-in sessions that we'll be holding over the course of a few days. So there's plenty of opportunity for you guys to engage with that work and get hands-on help and guidance with some of the things that we'll be releasing as part of that hackathon. Sorry, Rich, if you did mention that, I may have missed it.
It's a really good shout, Reese. I didn't mention it, but the additional thing as part of those invites going out will also be sharing the sort of skill sets and the technical requirements that will support you or people within your teams being able to actively engage and familiarize yourselves with the documents, the tools, the code that's being made available. One ask from us, and Reese has already put his email in the chat. Mine's there as well. But if there are additional people from your organisations that you would like to involve in this, then please do let us know. Just email us their addresses. And for those of you who've got access to Slido, I suggest, Reese, we run it as a Slido poll. Very, very simply, it's a simple question. Would that additional online workshop next Friday, where we can collectively get around the virtual whiteboard and springboard off each other's ideas, would that be of value to people? Because we're more than happy to arrange that. We just didn't want to be presumptive and put it in people's diaries if they didn't necessarily see value in it. So if you'd like to go to the Slido and cast your votes, and in the background I'll keep an eye on it. We'll leave it open for a few minutes. And if there are any questions, I haven't seen anything come into the chat yet, but if you'd like to raise your hands, more than happy to take those questions and hopefully answer them.
Thanks, Rich. What I say is, if anyone has any issues with Slido, feel free just to pop in the chat if you are interested in that session next Friday. I think it was 11 to 12, we said, Rich.
Yeah, it was indeed.
We might need the Slido still up if people haven't, the link, if people haven't.
Yeah, apologies. I will stick that back up for you. There you go.
But yeah, as Rich said, yeah, it's an opportunity to, before we close out the session, to ask any kind of final questions you may have on what we've presented, or particularly the ways of working in the mural and everything. Is everyone fairly comfortable with that? And how we kind of want to receive your feedback. Obviously, if there's anything kind of more detailed and articulated that you want to send via email, we'll welcome that. But I think largely we want to try and receive most of the feedback via the mural board if possible. Helps us collate all the information. It's also helpful for you guys to see other feedback that's being shared across industry as well, to kind of spark some thoughts and inspiration.
Excellent. Thank you, Reese. We're not seeing any questions coming in, so I'll just, hopefully everybody's, Tim, please go ahead.
So it looks like there's no questions. So probably I would like to reiterate what Reese and Rich have mentioned. We are very much committed in co-designing this with the industry, as we have said so from last year when we had multiple engagement sessions. So this is the key critical part of the engagement over what you saw, the roadmap of engagement. If this impacts you or any of your technology providers or any of your stakeholders, please get involved. The outcome, it really depends on how much we get input, the quality of the outcomes. So we really want this to work for the users. It is really we are doing this for the end users in mind, obviously with a view to accelerate flexibility markets in GB. But the time, just to highlight, the time window is not that long. Please do get involved. There's a lot of documentation, or there's 3 documentation, but there's quite a bit to go through. And there's hackathon. There's a number of things that we have put across for you to get involved. So if you do not get a chance to get involved in one, please do get involved in any other aspect of the engagement. So I think it's quite important. So since this will lead to us finalizing the standard and then publishing the standard, so I think just to give you a bit of a gentle nudge on that. Thanks, Rich. Over to you.
Great, thanks again, Tim. So yeah, if anybody's got anything to add or wants to respond on the Slido, I'll leave it open for a little while after the call. But other than that, thank you for attending today. Feel free to email Reese or myself with any comments, and we'll check in any requests for documentation or access to the documentation. We will share that with you, and keep your eyes open for the invites to the hackathon. Thank you, everyone.
Yes, and last thing as well, we'll be sharing the recording for this as well, for anyone that couldn't attend or any of your colleagues that couldn't make it. So please look out for an email on Monday with that information, and then possibly an invite to a call on Friday to follow up. But again, that's depending on the vote for Slido. But yeah, thanks all.
Yeah, will do. Thank you.
Have a nice weekend.
Nice
Thanks,
weekend
everyone.
all. Thanks. Bye.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.
All the best. Thank you. Bye for
See you
now.
guys.